The blazing sun scorched the dusty streets of Lagos where life moved fast, and no one looked back. Amid the heat and chaos, an elderly woman struggled under the weight of a heavy water bucket. Her hands trembled, her legs wavered, and beads of sweat streamed down her face. People hurried past, indifferent to her struggle. But then a young woman noticed. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, offering help from her heart. Little did she know this single act of kindness would change her life forever. Yet not everyone around her had pure intentions. A betrayal was quietly brewing, and what seemed like a blessing could soon spiral into chaos. Share your country and current local time in the comments below and subscribe to follow this incredible story. The streets of Lagos were alive with noise, heat, and movement. Vendors shouted their daily deals. Children ran barefoot on the dusty pavement, and motorcycles weaved dangerously between cars. Amina walked briskly beside her friend Kwame, her worn sandals kicking up small clouds of dust with every step. She carried only a small cloth bag, but inside it were the remnants of a day's earnings from the market, just enough to get by and not nearly enough to make life feel secure. Kwame glanced at her with a reassuring smile, though there was an edge in his tone. "Don't worry, Amina. I know the manager at that shop. He's a good man. Just follow me and everything will work out." Amina forced a small smile. Her legs ached and her chest felt heavy from the exhaustion that had accumulated over weeks of searching for work with no success. The reality pressed on her: if she didn't secure this job, she didn't know where her next meal would come from or how she would survive the approaching week. Her heart pounded with a mix of anxiety and hope, a combination that often left her breathless. As they turned the corner, the city seemed to shift around them. Among the cacophony of the crowded streets, her attention was drawn to a figure moving slowly ahead. An old woman, stooped and fragile, balanced a large bucket of water on her head. Each step was measured, trembling as if the slightest misstep could send her crashing to the ground. The sun beat mercilessly on her back, and the sweat that ran down her cheeks seemed to glisten painfully in the harsh light. "Look at her," Amina whispered to herself. Her eyes softened as she observed the frailty of the woman's movements. Something inside her stirred a quiet whisper, urging her to act. Kwame noticed her gaze and frowned. "Amina, we don't have time for this. We need to get there before the manager leaves. You can't stop for every person you see struggling on the street." Amina hesitated. She understood Kwame's point: the job, the opportunity, it was crucial. But her heart felt heavier than her legs. The old woman's body seemed to buckle under the weight of the bucket. She called out weakly, her voice hoarse and tired. "Please, children, help me. My body is too weak." Kwame sighed and shook his head. "I'm telling you, we can't. We have a chance to change our lives today. Don't waste it." But Amina couldn't ignore the sight before her. Her mind raced, imagining what could happen if the woman fell, if no one helped her. Something about this moment felt bigger than a single job opportunity. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the old woman, her fingers trembling slightly from a mix of fear and resolve. "Hello, Mama," Amina said gently, extending her hands toward the bucket. "Let me help you with that." Kwame stopped, blinking at her in surprise and frustration. "Amina, what are you doing? We don't have time." His voice carried sharpness, but it was tinged with confusion, as if he couldn't understand why she was willing to risk their opportunity for a stranger. Amina ignored him. She bent down carefully, taking the bucket from the woman's head. The weight was almost unbearable, but she steadied it on her hip, gritting her teeth against the strain. The old woman's eyes widened slightly, almost in disbelief, and she muttered a faint, "Thank you, child," before moving slowly forward, guiding Amina down a narrow, shaded path that branched off from the main street. The path was quieter, a contrast to the chaos of the city. Sunlight filtered through the leaves above, casting dappled patterns on the ground. The air smelled faintly of earth and flowers growing in neglected corners. Amina followed the old woman, each step bringing a sense of calm and anticipation. a strange mix of tension and serenity. They reached a small, crumbling house at the end of the path. Its walls were cracked paint peeling, but the courtyard was surprisingly neat. A small tree with delicate green leaves provided shade, and flowers grew in a tiny patch bright against the muted earth tones of the home. "Place the bucket there," the old woman instructed, pointing to the base of the tree. Amina set it down gently, wiping her brow. "I'll be going now, Mama," she said, preparing to turn away. The old woman took a step closer and placed her frail hand on Amina's arm. "Wait, my daughter," she said softly. "Go to that corner. There is a small pot there. Bring it to me." Amina's hands trembled as she walked to the corner and lifted the small earthenware pot. She carried it carefully back to the old woman, who untied a piece of red cloth and revealed its contents, a solid bar of gold gleaming in the sunlight. Amina gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had never seen anything so precious in her life. "You are kind," the old woman said gently, placing the bar of gold in Amina's hands. "People like you are rare. Keep this for 7 days. Do not sell it yet. After that, it will help you build a better life." Amina sank to her knees, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered, tears prickling her eyes. "I only helped because it was right, not for this." The old woman nodded, a small, knowing smile touching her lips. "Go, my daughter. Your kindness will open doors you cannot yet imagine." Amina stood holding the gold close to her chest, a mixture of wonder, gratitude, and trepidation filling her. She looked back at the old woman, whose eyes seemed to glow with quiet approval, and then began the journey home, her steps lighter despite the weight of the gold. Along the way, the city seemed different, less harsh, less indifferent. People passed unaware of the moment that had just unfolded, while Amina carried a secret that might change everything. Yet a part of her mind remained cautious. She knew that blessings sometimes attracted envy, and that not everyone would act with the same heart as hers. As she approached the street where Kwame waited, she could see him standing with his phone in hand. She waved, calling out, "Kwame, wait till you hear this." He looked up, his expression hard and guarded. The tension between them stretched, the moment a silent warning that her choices today might spark conflict as well as change. The gold in her hands felt heavier now, not from its weight, but from the responsibility it carried. Amina knew that the next steps mattered. How she acted, who she trusted, and whether she allowed compassion to guide her decisions would shape the days to come. For now, though, she breathed deeply, a smile playing on her lips. The first step had been taken. She had chosen kindness, and in that choice, a quiet, thrilling hope flickered, hope that sometimes, even in a world that seemed indifferent, good hearts could be rewarded. The narrow pathway led Amina and the frail old woman away from the crowded streets and into a quiet corner of the neighborhood. The air felt cooler here, shaded by overhanging trees, and the only sounds were the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird. Amina adjusted the heavy bucket on her hip, her arms trembling under the strain, but she refused to let the woman down. Each careful step she took felt like a silent promise she would not abandon someone in need. As they approached the old woman's house, Amina noticed the structure's fragility. The walls, made of sun-baked bricks, were cracked and worn, and the roof was patched with mismatched sheets of metal. Yet in spite of its humble state, the courtyard was immaculately clean. A small tree stood near the doorway, its leaves catching the sunlight, and a cluster of flowers in the corner added a delicate splash of color to the earthen tones. "Place the bucket here, my daughter," the old woman said, her voice quiet but firm. Amina knelt carefully and set the bucket down, wiping her sweat-drenched face with the back of her hand. The weight of the bucket had been heavy, but it was nothing compared to the warmth of gratitude she saw in the woman's eyes. "I'll be going now," Mama Amina said softly, preparing to leave. But the old woman placed a gnarled hand on her arm. "Wait. There is something more. Go to that corner. You will see a small pot. Bring it here." Curious, Amina obeyed. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the small earthenware pot from its hiding place. It was round, dark, and unassuming, yet there was a strange sense of importance radiating from it. She carried it back carefully, fearing that even a slight misstep might ruin the moment. The old woman unwrapped a faded red cloth, revealing its contents. A bar of gold lay within, gleaming brilliantly under the afternoon sun. Amina's eyes widened in disbelief. She had never held anything so precious. Her mind raced. Was this real? Could this tiny bar of metal truly be gold? "You are kind," the old woman said, her voice gentle. "People like you are rare. You help without expecting anything in return. This gift is for you, but remember, it is a test, not a reward. Keep it safe for 7 days. Do not sell it yet. After that, it will help you change your life." Amina sank to her knees, her hands cupping the heavy bar. Her heart swelled with gratitude and awe. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. "I did not help for this. I only wanted to do the right thing." The old woman smiled faintly. "And that is why you are worthy. Your heart is pure. Your kindness will open doors you cannot yet imagine." Amina stood holding the gold close to her chest. She felt a strange mix of emotions, joy, disbelief, and a deep sense of responsibility. This was not just a gift, it was a symbol, a sign that her actions mattered in a world that often seemed indifferent. As she turned to leave, the old woman called softly, "Remember, my daughter, greed blinds the mind, but kindness illuminates the path." Amina nodded, absorbing the words, letting them sink deep into her soul. She stepped out of the courtyard, the golden bar hidden carefully in her bag, and took a deep breath of the warm, dusty air. The sun no longer seemed oppressive. It felt almost welcoming, as if the universe itself were acknowledging her courage. Walking back through the narrow paths, Amina felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each step seemed lighter despite the weight of the gold tucked safely in her bag. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind, the old woman's trembling hands, the careful instruction, the gleam of gold in her palms. It all seemed surreal, like a dream she was afraid to wake from. Yet even amidst the wonder, a small voice inside reminded her that life could be unpredictable. Not everyone she encountered would be guided by kindness or honesty. She knew that the next days would require caution, that curiosity and envy might lurk around the corners of her own life. But for now, she allowed herself the rare luxury of hope. Reaching the busier streets again, Amina noticed the contrast. Children darted between carts, vendors shouted over each other, and the oppressive heat pressed down on the city with renewed intensity. Yet she moved through it all with a quiet joy, a sense of mission. She could not explain why, but the bar of gold felt heavier than its physical weight. It carried the gravity of responsibility, of the choices she would have to make, and of the lives she might touch if she acted wisely. Passing familiar shops and homes, she thought of Kwame waiting somewhere ahead, expecting her to hurry to focus on the task of finding employment. But Amina's mind was elsewhere. The gold was a reminder that small acts of kindness could ripple outward in ways she could never foresee. The idea was almost overwhelming, yet comforting, a promise that life could reward sincerity and generosity even in a harsh city where survival was often an unforgiving struggle. She paused for a moment under the shade of a tall tree, lifting her bag slightly and letting the gold rest securely against her side. The heat of the afternoon pressed against her skin, but she barely noticed. Instead, she felt a quiet determination rising within her. She had done the right thing, and somehow the world had noticed. Her thoughts returned to the old woman. There was wisdom in her eyes, a depth of understanding that seemed to penetrate not only Amina's actions, but the very essence of her being. The words "kindness will open doors you cannot yet imagine" echoed in her mind. She did not yet know what doors might open nor what challenges might come, but the certainty of this moment gave her strength. As she walked, she imagined the days ahead, 7 days of waiting, of contemplation, of careful thought. Each step she took was deliberate, measured, a silent promise to honor the gift she had received. She understood in a profound and instinctive way that the gold was not merely wealth. It was a test, a responsibility, and a symbol of the trust placed in her hands. When she finally reached the street where Kwame had been waiting, she saw him pacing impatiently, his phone clutched tightly in one hand. His expression shifted as their eyes met. Surprise, frustration, and confusion mingled on his face. Amina lifted her hand slightly, signaling that she had something to share, but she kept the gold hidden for now. She knew that some truths were delicate, and timing was everything. Amina's heart raced, not from fear, but from the anticipation of what lay ahead. She had chosen kindness over expediency, compassion over personal gain, and in doing so had stepped onto a path that could change her life. The city around her seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that something extraordinary had begun, born not of ambition, but of a heart willing to act with integrity. For the first time in many months, Amina felt a spark of hope, a quiet, glowing certainty that her life might indeed be different. That in the midst of hardship, of struggle, and of a city that often seemed blind to human suffering, goodness could be recognized, rewarded, and multiplied. Amina walked through the bustling streets, the golden bar carefully tucked inside her small cloth bag. The city around her seemed unchanged, the same vendors shouting, the same cars honking, the same crowds weaving through the dust and heat. Yet everything felt different to her. The weight in her bag was not just gold. It carried a responsibility, a promise, and a reminder of the act of kindness that had transformed the afternoon into something extraordinary. Her steps were quick, almost anxious. She wanted to share the moment with someone, to verbalize the surreal events she had just experienced. As she neared the intersection where Kwame waited, she could see him standing with a phone pressed to his ear, pacing impatiently. His brows were furrowed, and there was a tension in his shoulders that spoke of frustration, a subtle warning that he did not understand the gravity of her actions. "Kwame," she called, trying to catch his attention without revealing the gold just yet. "You won't believe what just happened." Kwame looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly. He lowered the phone, but his expression remained guarded. "What is it now, Amina?" he asked, a sharp edge in his voice. "We're already running late." Did something happen? Amina's heart sank a little. She had expected excitement, maybe curiosity, but instead there was skepticism, impatience, a refusal to see beyond the practical urgency of finding work. She adjusted the strap of her bag, feeling the heavy, precious weight inside. Every instinct told her this moment was important, that it deserved attention, that it deserved belief. I helped someone today." Amina began, her voice trembling slightly from a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. "An old woman. She was struggling with a heavy bucket. I carried it for her, Kwame." Kwame let out a sharp sigh. "Amina, are you serious? We don't have time for this. You're going to let some old lady stop us from what matters?" Her stomach tightened. She had expected this, feared this. He had always been practical, always focused on results, always prioritizing immediate gain. But something inside her rebelled against the harshness in his tone. The image of the old woman's trembling hands and her exhausted face flashed before her eyes. Could she turn her back on that? Could she ignore the cry for help that had pierced her heart? She needed help, Amina said softly, her voice growing firmer. She could have fallen, Kwame. She needed someone, and I chose to help her. Kwame shook his head, exasperated. "Chosen to help her, Amina. We are trying to survive here. You can't just run off for every person in need. You have responsibilities, dreams, a future to build." Amina's eyes welled with tears, not of sadness, but of frustration and disbelief. He didn't understand. The act of carrying a bucket, the smile she had received, the trust she had been given, it was more valuable than any immediate reward. It was more valuable than money, more valuable than work, and yet here was Kwame, her companion, viewing her choice as reckless, frivolous a threat to their survival. I know, Kwame, she said, her voice steadying. I know we are searching for work, trying to survive, but sometimes doing the right thing is worth more than the urgency of our own goals. This wasn't reckless. It was necessary. Kwame's jaw tightened. He glanced around nervously as if the world itself were conspiring to judge him for his impatience. Necessary, he muttered. Amina, life doesn't reward morality. It rewards results. You think carrying a bucket makes any difference in the long run? Amina stared at him, silent for a moment. She could see the practicality in his words, yes, but she could also see something darker creeping underneath the hint of envy, the stirrings of desire for gain. She clenched her hands around the strap of her bag. It may not reward morality immediately, she replied softly. But goodness always finds its way. And some rewards, some blessings, come when you least expect them. Kwame's eyes flickered at her words. He said nothing, just folded his arms and stared as though weighing the truth against his own convictions. Amina, meanwhile, felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. She had chosen to act, and the moment had changed her. Even if Kwame could not see it yet, she knew that the path she had taken would lead somewhere meaningful. With cautious steps, she unzipped the small bag, revealing the bar of gold, just enough for him to glimpse it. The sunlight caught its surface, sending sharp glints across the dusty street. Kwame's eyes widened in disbelief. Where did that come from? He asked, his voice low and unsteady. There was something in the way he spoke that frightened her slightly, a mix of awe and greed, curiosity and suspicion. It's from the old woman, Amina said, keeping her tone calm but firm. I helped her carry her water. She gave me this as a gift. She said to keep it safe for 7 days, not to sell it yet. Kwame's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He looked at the gold, then at Amina, as if struggling to reconcile the two realities, the girl he knew, kind and compassionate, and the gleaming bar in her hands. She gave it to you. Just like that. Yes, Amina said, nodding slowly. Her eyes held a quiet intensity. She said, my kindness earned it. Nothing else. I didn't expect this. I only acted because it was right. Kwame turned his gaze back to the street, shifting uncomfortably. There was a brief silence, heavy and taut, filled with unspoken thoughts. Amina could feel the tension, the wheels turning in his mind. She could sense the stirrings of desire, the question of why not me whispering behind his eyes, and yet she remained calm. Her hands tightened on the bag. Kwame, listen. What matters is that I did the right thing. This gold is not just wealth. It's trust, it's recognition, it's a responsibility. I intend to honor it. Kwame's lips pressed into a thin line. I just... He started, then stopped. The words faltered, lost in the air between them. He had been faced with a choice, too, to understand, to be grateful, to learn, or to let envy and ambition take root. Amina sighed softly and tucked the bag securely against her side. We should continue, she said. There is work to be done, but now. I also know that kindness matters. Even here in the middle of this city, it can make a difference. Kwame remained silent, his mind churning. And together they stepped forward, moving through the dusty streets, Amina carrying not just a bar of gold, but the weight and blessing of an extraordinary moment. A moment born of compassion, courage, and the choice to act rightly when it mattered most. Though the city buzzed around them with all its noise, heat, and indifference, Amina felt a quiet flame of hope and determination growing inside her. She had glimpsed something profound, that a simple act of kindness, unnoticed by the world, could carry consequences far beyond what one might imagine. And that thought alone made every aching muscle, every sweat-drenched step worth it. She did not yet know the challenges that awaited her in the days to come, nor the ways in which this gift would test her patience, judgment, and courage. But for now, she allowed herself a small smile, a quiet acknowledgement that she had acted from the heart. And in doing so had planted the first seed of change in her life, change that no one could take away no matter how hard they might try. Amina took a deep breath as she faced Kwame, her heart still racing from the encounter with the old woman. The sunlight reflected off the streets of Lagos, casting long shadows behind the two friends. The city hummed around them, vendors shouting, cars honking, the chatter of children running barefoot. But Amina felt as though the world had narrowed down to just this moment, this confrontation of truth and curiosity. "Kwame," she said softly, opening her small bag carefully to reveal the golden bar once more. The metal glinted brilliantly, catching his attention instantly. "I need you to see this. Please. Just listen." Kwame's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and disbelief crossing his face. He stepped closer, his brow furrowed. Where did that come from?" His voice was almost a whisper, though it carried an edge of something else. Something that made Amina's stomach tighten with unease. She could see the question lurking behind his words. "Could I have it too?" "It's from the old woman I helped today," Amina said, keeping her tone calm but steady. "She was struggling with a heavy bucket of water. I carried it for her, and in return she gave me this bar of gold. She told me to keep it safe for 7 days before doing anything with it." Kwame blinked rapidly as though he were trying to absorb information that his mind refused to believe. She gave it to you. Just like that?" His voice trembled slightly, betraying the stirrings of a mixture of awe and envy. "Yes," Amina replied, nodding. "She said my kindness earned it, nothing else. I didn't ask for it and I never expected it. I only helped because it was the right thing to do." Kwame's gaze flicked between her eyes and the golden bar. His lips parted, then pressed together as he struggled to comprehend the situation. He looked away for a moment, pacing a few steps back as if the truth of what he had just seen was both intoxicating and infuriating. Amina noticed the subtle change in his demeanor. There was admiration there, certainly, but beneath it a darker shade, the beginnings of desire, of questioning, of why not me. Her hands tightened on the bag instinctively. She had anticipated this reaction, but facing it now made her pulse quicken. "Kwame," she said, her voice firmer now. "I need you to understand something. This gold, it's not just money. It's trust. It's recognition. And it's a responsibility. It is a reminder that doing the right thing matters even when no one is watching. I have been given this because of my choices today, not because of luck, not because I asked for it, but because I acted with integrity." Kwame's jaw clenched. He exhaled slowly, attempting to calm the rush of emotions swirling inside him. "Integrity, Amina. We are trying to survive here. You think integrity feeds the stomach? You think helping some old lady can put food on the table, can pay rent, can save us from the city's struggles?" Amina felt her chest tighten. She knew he had a point in the practical sense. Money and survival were constant pressures, but she refused to let his cynicism diminish the significance of what had happened. She met his gaze steadily. "Not everything is measured by immediate gain, Kwame. The value of a good deed is not always visible right away, but it sets something in motion, something bigger than us, bigger than the streets we walk, bigger than the struggles we face day to day. That is what matters." Kwame's eyes flicked to the bar of gold again. He swallowed hard, his throat moving as though he wanted to speak, but found the words trapped behind a wall of disbelief and greed. "So, she just gave this to you? No tests, no questions, no proof of worthiness except being kind?" "Yes," Amina said softly, her tone gentle but unwavering. "She said my actions spoke for me. She saw my heart, Kwame. And that is what earned me this. Not cleverness, not negotiation, not ambition, just a willingness to help someone when it was needed." Kwame's gaze shifted to the street, restless. He kicked at a small stone, sending it skittering across the pavement. His mind raced, turning over the impossibility of it all. If she gave it to her, why not me? Why not me? The thought whispered like a shadow, quiet but persistent, tugging at his conscience. Amina noticed the change, a subtle tension in his posture that she had never seen before. He started, then stopped, uncertain. I can't believe this. It doesn't make sense. His voice had dropped to a low murmur, almost as if he were arguing with himself rather than her. Amina reached out slightly, not touching him, just letting the calmness in her voice cut through the tension. Kwame, I know it's hard to understand. I know it seems unfair in some ways. But life is not about fairness, it's about choices. And today I made a choice to act with my heart. That choice brought this to me. Nothing else matters in this moment. Kwame's head drooped slightly and he looked at the gold again. His fingers itched and his chest tightened. He felt a pull, a hunger, a question. Could I have done the same? Should I have tried? The emotions battled inside him. Envy, desire, awe, and a faint glimmer of guilt. Amina, sensing his turmoil, took a step back. She knew that the gold carried power, not just the weight of wealth, but the weight of responsibility. She didn't want to provoke greed, but she wanted him to see clearly the choice she had made and the lesson it carried. Kwame, she said, her voice softening. This gold is not what defines the act. It's not the point. The point is that helping someone, being kind without expecting anything in return, that changes who we are. That sets the stage for what comes next. You can look at this bar and see wealth, or you can see the proof of a heart that chose well. The choice is yours too, but only if you act with your own integrity. Kwame's eyes narrowed. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the busy street as though the world outside might judge him. His mind spun. He had wanted that gold, yes. But now he realized it was not the object itself that mattered. The power it represented was meaningless without the understanding of why it had been given. And the realization made him uneasy, as if he were confronting a reflection of his own shortcomings. For a moment, silence fell between them. The city hummed around them, but their bubble remained suspended, filled with tension, revelation, and the weight of choices. Amina held her gaze on him, steady and unyielding, letting the truth sink in. Finally, Kwame spoke, his voice quieter now, almost unrecognizable from his earlier impatience. I don't know what to say. There was an honesty in his admission that Amina had rarely seen. For once, he was confronted not with the challenges of survival, but with the challenge of conscience. That's okay, Amina replied softly. You don't have to say anything right now, just think about it. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from the simplest acts. He nodded, still glancing at the bar of gold, his expression unreadable but thoughtful. Amina secured the bag and took a careful step away, letting the weight of the moment settle between them. She didn't know what he would choose or whether envy or understanding would guide his next actions. But she knew that she had acted rightly and that the gift she had received was not merely wealth. It was affirmation that goodness, even in a harsh city, could be recognized and honored. As they walked together side by side through the dusty streets of Lagos, Amina felt a quiet determination growing within her. She would honor the old woman's trust. She would respect the responsibility of the gold. And she would continue to act with integrity even if the world around her seemed indifferent or impatient. Kwame walked beside her, silent but thoughtful, the glint of gold occasionally catching the sunlight in his peripheral vision. Somewhere deep within, a seed of understanding had been planted. Whether it would grow into wisdom or wilt under the weight of desire, only time would tell. But in this moment, the lesson was clear. Sometimes the heart knows the right path before the mind can accept it, and the rewards of kindness often arrive in forms more profound than wealth alone. The next morning, the streets of Lagos were alive with the usual chaos. Vendors set up their stalls, the smell of fried plantains and roasted corn wafted through the air, and the sun rose mercilessly, burning the pavements and the skin of every passerby. Kwame stepped out of his small rented room with a restless energy coursing through him. His mind was not on the day's work nor on the opportunities he and Amina had been seeking. It was consumed entirely by a single thought, the gold. He replayed the previous day in his head. Amina, kind and unwavering, had received the gold from the old woman simply because of her good heart. Kwame's chest tightened as envy gnawed at him. Why not me, he thought. If she can be rewarded for kindness, can't I? What's stopping me from doing the same or from taking what is rightfully within reach? His feet carried him purposefully toward the quiet corner where the old woman lived. The streets were not unfamiliar to him. He had passed this way countless times, but today he saw every detail with new intent. The cracks in the walls, the way the sunlight hit the trees, the small alleyways that could hide a quick escape. Everything was a potential opportunity. As he approached the path, he saw her, a frail figure bent beneath the weight of a heavy bucket. Her hands trembled and sweat glistened on her skin. The sight which yesterday had elicited compassion in Amina now triggered something else in Kwame calculation. If she gave Amina gold, there must be more. Surely more could be mine. He stepped forward cautiously. "Mama," he said, his voice low, almost pleading, "let me help you." His hand reached out for the bucket. His eyes studied her carefully, searching for weakness, for an opening. The old woman looked at him steadily. Her gaze was calm, piercing, as if she could read the thoughts he tried so hard to hide. "You came to help?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with suspicion. "Yes," Kwame said quickly, dropping his tone into one of vulnerability. "My father, he is very sick. We have no money for medicine. I didn't know where else to go. Please, let me help you." The old woman's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded slowly. She handed him the bucket, and Kwame balanced it on his head, careful to appear steady. His heart pounded, not from exertion but from anticipation. Each step toward her house felt like crossing into a world charged with potential. A world where temptation and reward walked hand in hand. They reached the small courtyard. The house, cracked and weathered, seemed innocuous, but Kwame knew better. He observed the small tree, the flowers, and then the tiny pot hidden in a corner, just as Amina had described. His pulse quickened. The gold was here. He could see it now, resting inside the dark earthenware. The old woman waited patiently, as if aware of the storm brewing within him. "Place the bucket down, young man," she instructed. Kwame complied, pretending fatigue, but his eyes never left the pot. He crouched slightly, careful not to appear overly eager, and then slowly approached the small corner. The pot sat under the shade of a low mango tree, exactly where he had imagined. He reached out and touched the cloth covering it. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. For a brief second he hesitated. A memory flickered in his mind, the way Amina had received her reward. The old woman's words about kindness and integrity whispered to him almost pleadingly. Do the right thing. But desire and greed were louder. The glint of gold promised a life he had dreamed of. A life beyond struggle, beyond constant worry, beyond the endless pressure of survival. Kwame lifted the cloth. His eyes widened as he saw the gold bars stacked neatly inside the pot. Not one, not two, but several. His hand shook as he traced the edges, feeling the smooth, cold metal beneath his fingers. He whispered to himself, if she received one. Why not take more? She doesn't know I'm here. No one will know. The rational part of him, the part that had grown up with Amina's lessons, with the belief in fairness and honesty, wavered. The thought of deceit, of stealing what was not his, twisted in his stomach, but it was drowned out by the intoxicating thrill of temptation. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted 3 bars and hid them inside his shirt. His pulse raced. The remaining bars gleamed innocently under the sun, untouched, as if mocking his ambition. He quickly replaced the cloth and carried the pot back to the front, setting it down in front of the old woman, as though he had done nothing unusual. Her eyes met his calm and observant, and for a moment Kwame felt a chill run through him. She did not speak, only nodded as if she understood or perhaps suspected his actions. "Thank you, Mama," he said, forcing a small smile. His voice was steady, but inside a storm raged. "I have taken it, but no one knows. I am clever, I am careful, I am in control." And yet as he walked away, a small unease crept in, almost imperceptible, like a shadow brushing against the edge of his mind. Something felt wrong, though he could not yet name it. He was consumed by the thrill of what he had acquired, and for the moment that was enough. The streets of Lagos, which had seemed mundane only hours before, now felt electric. Every passer-by was a potential witness, every stray glance a challenge. Kwame's thoughts raced, planning, imagining how he could use the gold, how quickly he could turn it into freedom, comfort, status. He could see a life of ease, luxury, and opportunity stretching before him like a road paved with possibility. Yet beneath the excitement, a subtle fear whispered. What if the old woman knew? What if she had anticipated this as she had anticipated Amina's actions? Kwame shook his head, forcing the thought away. No, he was careful. He had concealed the bars. He had acted silently. He had won. For now, he walked down the streets of Lagos with a newfound confidence. Each step carried both pride and unease, an intoxicating mix of power and anxiety. The city hummed around him, oblivious to the secret he carried. The gold pressed against his chest felt like more than just metal. It was desire, ambition, and the promise of everything he had ever wanted. Yet in the quiet recesses of his mind, a distant echo lingered, the memory of Amina's honesty, her unwavering integrity, and the purity of her reward. It whispered that choices had consequences, that every act of greed carried a weight heavier than gold itself. Kwame shook the thought away and continued pretending normalcy to the world around him. But deep inside, a seed had been planted, a seed that would grow, twisting desire and morality together, creating a storm that would soon be impossible to contain. The golden bars in his shirt were both triumph and curse. The path he had chosen felt thrilling now, but the city of Lagos, full of heat, dust, and unblinking eyes, seemed ready to witness what would come next. And Kwame, for all his cleverness and ambition, was about to discover that not all treasures were meant to be taken without consequence. The sun had climbed high, and the streets of Lagos sweltered with the heat of mid-morning. Vendors shouted louder, children ran barefoot, and the city hummed with the chaotic rhythm of survival. Yet Kwame moved with a single focus, his heart thudding in his chest as he approached the small, familiar corner where the old woman's house stood. Each step carried both anticipation and dread. He had planned carefully, and now the moment had arrived to act. His eyes scanned the narrow path leading to the house. The old woman appeared in the distance, stooped and fragile, carrying her heavy water bucket as always. She moved with a slow, deliberate grace, completely unaware of the schemes forming in Kwame's mind. For him, this was more than an act of survival. It was an opportunity to seize a fortune, one that Amina had received only because of her honesty and kindness. Why shouldn't I have it too? He thought, clenching his fists. Kwame approached cautiously, his steps measured, careful not to appear suspicious. He greeted the old woman with a quiet, respectful voice. "Mama, please, let me help you," he said, reaching for the bucket. His fingers brushed the rough wood handle lightly, pretending uncertainty and exhaustion. The old woman's eyes met his, calm and unyielding, as if she could see right through the pretense. "You are here to help?" she asked softly, her voice steady, carrying an unspoken challenge. "Yes," Kwame replied quickly, forcing sincerity. "My father is sick. We have no money for medicine. I don't know where else to turn. Please, let me assist you." His voice trembled just slightly, a delicate touch of vulnerability designed to mask the greed rising within him. The old woman nodded slowly and handed him the bucket. Kwame lifted it carefully, balancing it on his head with exaggerated care to avoid drawing attention. Each step toward the house felt like crossing a threshold into forbidden territory. He knew what awaited him, the small pot hidden under the shade of the mango tree, the treasure that could change his life if he dared to take it. As he reached the courtyard, he took in the familiar details, the cracked sun-baked walls, the patched metal roof, the small tree casting delicate shadows, and the neat cluster of flowers. Everything seemed innocuous, almost charming. But Kwame's mind was laser-focused on the pot. He crouched slightly, glancing at the old woman who watched silently, her gaze unwavering and deep. He took a steadying breath and moved toward the mango tree, pretending casual curiosity while his heart raced with anticipation. The pot was just as Amina had described, dark, round, covered with a worn cloth. He reached out, fingers brushing the coarse fabric, and lifted it slightly. His pulse quickened. Inside, stacked neatly, were bars of gold, their surface shining brilliantly under the sunlight. Kwame's breath caught in his throat. Not one or two, but multiple bars lay before him. A thrill surged through him, a dangerous, intoxicating mixture of power, excitement, and temptation. For a long moment he froze, caught between desire and conscience. The memory of Amina receiving her gold flashed in his mind, the purity of her heart, the simplicity of her actions, and the reward that had been given without deception. Do the right thing. A faint whisper urged, but it was drowned out by the louder, darker call of ambition. No one will know. I can take this. I deserve this. Life has never given me a chance like this. Slowly, deliberately, Kwame lifted 3 bars of gold. His hands shook slightly, not from the weight, but from the sheer thrill of daring. He slipped them under his shirt, pressing them close to his chest, feeling the cold metal against his skin. His eyes darted to the remaining bars, gleaming innocently, tempting him further. He shook his head, forcing himself to stop. One risk at a time, he reasoned. One bold move could be enough to secure his fortune. He carefully replaced the cloth over the pot and carried it back to the front of the courtyard. His posture calm, his expression neutral. The old woman's eyes followed him, steady and knowing. But she said nothing. Kwame felt a chill run down his spine, the subtle awareness that he had been seen, perhaps understood. Yet the woman chose to remain silent. "Thank you, Mama," he said, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. His voice was calm, but inside a storm raged pride, fear, and the intoxicating allure of what he had taken. He walked down the pathway, hiding the gold beneath his shirt, pretending to be a young man who had simply done his duty. The streets of Lagos greeted him with their usual noise and chaos. But Kwame felt detached from it all. He was consumed by the possibilities now open to him. In his mind, he calculated the gold could buy freedom, comfort, even prestige. It could change everything he had struggled for, everything he had envied in Amina's life. He imagined himself standing tall, no longer burdened by the city's relentless pressure, no longer weighed down by the uncertainty of survival. Yet beneath the thrill, a subtle unease gnawed at him. Did she know, he wondered? Did the old woman see through me as she saw Amina? The thought sent a shiver through him, but he shook it off. No, he had been careful. No one had seen. The pot was back in place. He had acted with precision. He was clever. He was in control. Kwame's steps became brisker, each movement measured, almost rehearsed. The gold pressed against his chest like a secret heartbeat, reminding him of the audacity of his actions. He was exhilarated, alive in a way he had not felt before, danger, risk, and reward merging into a single pulse of excitement. As he navigated the crowded streets, his mind raced with plans. Where would he hide the gold? How would he turn it into opportunity without raising suspicion? How would he keep Amina from discovering what he had done? Each thought was layered with both practical calculation and a subtle panic. The gnawing sense that one wrong step could unravel everything. And yet for now, the streets of Lagos seemed to bend to his will. Vendors shouted, children ran past, motorcycles weaved dangerously close, but Kwame's focus was unwavering. He had taken what he wanted, and he felt for the moment unstoppable. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, soft, almost imperceptible, a warning of the consequences to come. He ignored it, focusing instead on the glittering bars beneath his shirt. The city was a maze of opportunity, but it was also a place of exposure, of judgment, of consequences that could arrive without warning. And Kwame, emboldened by greed, was unaware of how swiftly the shadows of consequence would follow him. For now he walked with confidence, a secret treasure against his chest and a plan forming in his mind. The gold was his for now. But in the silence of his thoughts, the first seeds of reckoning had been planted, and he did not yet realize that the cost of his ambition would soon manifest in ways far beyond his control. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long, wavering shadows over the streets of Lagos. The city continued its usual chaos. Vendors packed up their stalls. Children played in the alleys, and cars honked endlessly as traffic clogged the main roads. To everyone else, it was just another ordinary afternoon. But for Kwame, the world had shifted. The golden bars pressed beneath his shirt seemed to thrum with a life of their own, and the air around him felt charged, heavy, as though the city itself could sense the secret he carried. At first, he tried to walk calmly, blending with the throngs of people. But the weight against his chest was more than metal. It was the burden of guilt, fear, and exhilaration fused into one. Every glance from a passerby felt scrutinizing. Every shadow lurking in the alleys seemed alive with judgment. He began to mutter under his breath fragments of conversation with himself, as if arguing, negotiating, and justifying his actions all at once. Just a little more, just enough, he whispered to the bars, pressing his palms against them as though they might answer. No one will know. It's mine, mine. His eyes darted nervously to the street corners, as if expecting the gold to speak back, accusing him of theft. He stumbled slightly over a pothole, muttering, careful, careful. Don't let anyone see. The laughter came next, a high, sharp, unnatural laugh that seemed to slice through the noise of the city. Kwame's voice carried strangely, echoing off the buildings in a rhythm that didn't match his steps. People passing by paused, frowning or stepping back. A group of children playing nearby ran off, sensing something uncanny in the man's movements. One woman clutched her apron, whispering to another, "Isn't that Kwame?" Kwame ignored the stares, lost entirely in the turmoil of his mind. His hands flew to his face and back, rubbing the bars beneath his shirt as if they might whisper secrets or judge him for his audacity. "It's mine, all mine," he cried out, pointing erratically at the sky. "Amina got one. Why not me? I deserve it all." He began pacing, circling the street corner, his shoes kicking up small clouds of dust. He muttered names and accusations, imaginary conversations with Amina, the old woman, even the city itself. You gave her. Why not me? The old woman. She has more. She could give me more. Why not me? His voice rose and fell unpredictably, alternating between whispers and loud declarations. Passers-by watched from a safe distance, unsure whether to intervene. A few older women crossed themselves, murmuring prayers, while a man squatted on a nearby crate, shaking his head. "He's lost it." Completely, one whispered. "Gold has driven him mad." Kwame's laughter escalated, raw and manic, echoing across the narrow streets. He began spinning in circles, throwing his hands in the air as if conducting some invisible orchestra of voices. "I have it. I took it. The gold. It's mine," he shouted, falling to his knees for a brief moment before springing back to his feet. His movements were erratic, unpredictable, and fueled by the intense cocktail of greed, fear, and guilt that now dominated his mind. Inside, a storm raged. He remembered Amina's words, the purity of her heart, the lesson of kindness, the quiet joy she had felt receiving her single bar. And yet every memory twisted into frustration. Why her? Why not me? Why not me? He screamed silently into his thoughts. I carried the weight, I watched, I planned, and she still got the blessing first. The sense of injustice gnawed at him, relentlessly feeding the spiraling chaos of his mind. He began talking to the gold itself as if it were sentient, responding to him. You cannot leave me. You belong to me, Amina. She doesn't deserve you. Only I do. His voice rang out sharply, drawing more attention. People stepped back, some covering their mouths, others muttering prayers or warnings. A stray dog barked and ran off, startled by the intensity of his shrill laughter. Kwame's hands flew to the bars, clutching, pressing, shaking them against his chest. He collapsed to the ground, rolling slightly, as though the weight of his actions were both physical and metaphysical. It's too much. Too heavy. It talks to me, he yelled. The words spilled out uncontrollably, fragmented and nonsensical, yet charged with the raw energy of someone teetering on the edge of reason. Amina, arriving just as dusk began to tint the sky with orange and gold, froze at the sight. Her heart leapt into her throat, a mixture of fear, sorrow, and disbelief. Kwame was unrecognizable, not the friend she knew, not the young man who had walked beside her through hardship, but a man possessed by his own ambition, a prisoner of his greed. "Kwame," she shouted, rushing forward. "Stop, please, look at me." But he barely noticed her. His eyes, wide and frantic, darted past her, locked on some invisible presence only he could see. "No one can take it from me. The gold, it speaks. It knows mine, all mine." She hesitated for a moment, taking stock of the scene. The curious stares, the whispers of passers-by, the uneven cobblestones underfoot, and Kwame's erratic, almost dangerous movements. Her heart raced, but her resolve strengthened. She had to save him, to anchor him back to reality before the city, or worse, his own obsession, destroyed him completely. Amina reached out carefully, placing a hand on his arm. "Kwame, listen to me," she cried, trying to steady both him and herself. He flinched, turning partially toward her, eyes wild and uncomprehending. "You're not thinking. The gold, it isn't everything. Please, calm down." He laughed again, a hollow, broken sound. "You think you can stop it? You got your gold. I want more, I need it, it belongs to me." He gestured wildly, knocking over a small crate, scattering the few coins and trinkets a vendor had left. The street erupted into whispers and murmurs, the city itself reacting to the chaos unfolding. Amina's hands shook as she grabbed his arm firmly. "I won't let you destroy yourself," she shouted. "Come with me. We'll fix this together, but you must trust me." Kwame's body trembled. His voice cracked, alternating between pleas and wild laughter. "No. No, the gold. It talks, it says I must have it all." His eyes rolled back momentarily, and he swayed dangerously, as if the very air around him threatened to pull him into madness. The few people nearby hesitated, unsure whether to intervene, whispering and glancing nervously at the spectacle. Amina's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to let go. She tugged him gently, coaxing him forward, speaking softly but urgently, trying to cut through the delirium. "Kwame, please. You are stronger than this. You are not your greed. Come back to me." For a brief moment his laughter faltered. He blinked rapidly, his eyes searching hers as if trying to find a tether back to reality. And then, with an almost imperceptible shudder, he began to lean on her, allowing himself to be guided through the tremors of obsession still rippled through his frame. The city around them faded into background noise. Amina focused solely on anchoring him, moving carefully through the dusty streets, through the throng of curious onlookers, toward the narrow path that led back to the old woman's house. Each step was delicate, precise, a balance between rescue and the unpredictable chaos of Kwame's mind. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Kwame was still muttering, laughing intermittently. but under Amina's careful guidance he was moving. The gold hidden beneath his shirt pressed against him like both a prize and a curse. And Amina, her arms weary but unwavering, knew that the real challenge had only just begun to bring him back to reason before the consequences of greed became irreversible. The evening had settled over Lagos, draping the city in a warm amber glow that softened the harsh edges of its streets. But for Amina, there was no comfort in the beauty of the sunset. Kwame's wild laughter, fragmented mutterings, and frantic gestures had not left her mind since she had first reached for him. The gold had sparked something in him, a greed so consuming it had overtaken reason and compassion. And now it was her responsibility to save him, to guide him back to the person she had once known. Her heart pounded as she watched him stumble and sway through the narrow streets, oblivious to the shouts and whispers of the onlookers. The city, which normally teemed with life, seemed to shrink around them, becoming a corridor of tension and urgency. Children, scattered vendors closed their stalls hurriedly, and a few cautious passers-by watched in horror, uncertain whether to intervene. Amina's mind raced. She needed help, but she also knew that no one could approach Kwame alone. He was unpredictable, unsteady, and potentially dangerous, not maliciously, but because his mind had been overtaken by obsession. She scanned the street, looking for someone she could trust, someone strong enough to assist her in guiding him safely without provoking panic or harm. That was when she noticed a tall man approaching from the opposite direction. He was dressed simply, a cap shading his eyes, but there was a steadiness in his stride, an unshakable calm that suggested experience and reliability. Amina's chest tightened with hope. She ran toward him, calling out urgently, "Sir, please, I need your help. My friend, he's not well. He's lost control." The man stopped and turned to her, concern etching his features. "Slow down," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Tell me what's happening." Amina grabbed his arm briefly, explaining quickly between breaths. "It's Kwame. The gold, he took it and now he's... I don't know how to explain it, but he's talking to it, laughing, saying things that don't make sense. He's going mad. Please, I can't manage him alone." The man's eyes narrowed, taking in the chaotic scene. Kwame was spinning in small circles now, gesturing wildly at the air, cackling in a way that made Amina's stomach twist. "Stay with me," the man said, stepping closer, his movements confident and deliberate. "We'll handle this together. I need you to guide him toward me slowly. Don't frighten him. Speak gently but firmly. I'll take it from there." Amina nodded, relief flooding through her. She took a deep breath and approached Kwame carefully, her hands extended in a calming gesture. "Kwame," she said softly, her voice carrying over the din of the street. "Listen to me. Please. You are safe. The gold, it isn't controlling you. Come with me." Kwame turned briefly toward her, his eyes wild but flickering with recognition. No, the gold, it speaks. It knows mine. All his voice cracked as he gestured toward the sky as if addressing some unseen presence. "Kwame," Amina said, stepping closer, her tone unwavering despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm here. You are not alone. I will not let you be consumed by this. Listen to my voice, come with me, please." He flinched at her touch, jerking back slightly, but there was hesitation now, a crack in the wall of mania that had built around him. Amina's heart leapt. She edged closer, slowly, speaking softly, recounting memories of their shared struggles, moments of laughter, and times when he had shown courage and kindness. She tried to anchor him to reality, to remind him of who he was before the gold had overtaken his mind. The tall man moved in carefully, his presence commanding but calm. He extended his hands toward Kwame, not threatening, not imposing, but offering a steady anchor. Amina guided Kwame closer, gently urging him to place his trust in them. Each step was painstaking, each movement measured, as Kwame continued to mutter and laugh intermittently. "Kwame, I am here. We can fix this." Trust me, she repeated, her voice a lifeline thrown across the tumultuous sea of his mind. Slowly, he allowed himself to be steered, wobbling slightly but following Amina's lead. They moved together through the streets, the cityscape fading into background noise. Kwame's hands trembled, occasionally clutching at his chest where the gold lay hidden, pressing it as if it were both a treasure and a curse. Amina whispered reassurances, recounting small moments of shared trust and loyalty to tether him to reason. As they approached the familiar narrow path leading to the old woman's house, Kwame's pace faltered. His eyes darted to the pot under the mango tree, glinting slightly in the remaining sunlight. His mutterings intensified, now interspersed with murmurs directed at the gold itself. "Do not leave me. It is mine. Mine." The tall man positioned himself strategically, blocking Kwame from sudden movements while still maintaining a calming presence. Amina continued speaking softly, her words, rhythmic, familiar, guiding him step by step. Slowly, haltingly, Kwame began to respond. His movements became less erratic, his mutterings less frequent, though his eyes still flickered with moments of panic and obsession. Finally, after what felt like hours, condensed into minutes, they reached the courtyard. Kwame stumbled slightly but did not fall. The old woman emerged from her small house, her expression calm and penetrating. She held a wooden staff lightly, and her eyes, sharp and knowing, fell upon Kwame instantly. Amina knelt beside him, her hand resting on his arm, whispering soothingly, "He's here, Kwame. He knows what to do. You're safe now. Trust us." Kwame's shoulders shook as he sank to the ground, briefly muttering incoherently until the old woman stepped closer. Her presence alone seemed to command attention, even from the chaos of Kwame's mind. "Kwame," she said, her voice calm, steady, and filled with quiet authority. "Look at me." Kwame's eyes, wide and frantic, locked on her. A sudden silence fell over the courtyard, the city sounds muted in the gravity of the moment. The old woman's gaze pierced through him, assessing, weighing, discerning. And then slowly she extended a hand, placing it lightly on his chest. Kwame's body trembled at the touch, the tremors of mania passing through him like a storm gradually subsiding. Amina held her breath, watching, feeling the tension ebb slightly. The old woman muttered softly under her breath, words ancient and rhythmic, as if weaving a spell of calm around Kwame. His laughter subsided into murmurs, his mutterings slowed, and the frantic energy that had driven him moments ago began to dissipate. The tall man moved closer, guiding Kwame, gently helping him sit upright. Amina's heart leapt with cautious hope. She whispered softly into his ear, "You are safe, Kwame. The gold cannot control you. I am here. We are here." Kwame's hands trembled, clutching at the ground, at Amina's arm, at the invisible weight of his own actions. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, he began to stabilize. The city, the sunset, the warm shadows of the courtyard, they all seemed to align around him, as if the world itself were helping restore his balance. For the first time since the gold had consumed him, Kwame's eyes cleared and he looked directly at Amina. Recognition, confusion, and fear mingled there, but there was also a fragile thread of understanding, a glimmer that he was still himself, that he could be saved, and that redemption was possible if he chose it. Amina exhaled slowly, relief mingling with exhaustion. She had guided him this far, but she knew the journey was not over. The gold remained a potent temptation, a reminder of the choices that had led him here. Yet for now, he was present, and that was enough. The old woman stepped back, her staff lightly tapping the ground. "He is ready to see reason," she said softly. "But only because your heart guided him back. Never underestimate the power of a kind and steadfast heart." Kwame's trembling hands slowly relaxed and he leaned against Amina for support, whispering a confused, almost apologetic, "I don't know what's happening." "You're safe now," Amina replied, her voice gentle, firm, and full of compassion. "We'll fix this together. The gold doesn't have to ruin you. The city hummed around them again, alive but distant as the first threads of calm settled over Kwame's mind. Amina knew that this was just the beginning of the journey to restore him fully, but it was a crucial step, a triumph born of courage, compassion, and unyielding determination. The evening shadows deepened as Amina guided Kwame through the familiar narrow path to the old woman's house. The air was thick with the scent of dust earth and the faint sweetness of evening blooms. Kwame's steps were tentative, his body trembling, still clutching at the gold hidden beneath his shirt. He muttered incoherently, sometimes laughing, sometimes sobbing, a fragile mind teetering between clarity and obsession. Amina held him carefully, whispering gentle words to keep him tethered to the present, each step toward the courtyard carrying them closer to the confrontation that would determine the course of his fate. The courtyard appeared quiet and still, the old house resting among the shadows cast by the low-hanging mango tree. The old woman emerged slowly from her doorway, her staff in hand, her posture calm but commanding. She had witnessed the entire transformation of Kwame's mind, from calculated ambition to reckless greed, to madness spurred by obsession. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, settled on him, instantly piercing through the chaos that clung to his trembling form. Kwame froze. His wide eyes darted between Amina and the old woman. The gold pressed against his chest felt heavier now, not in its physical weight, but as if the very air was judging him, demanding accountability. He swallowed hard, uncertain whether to flee, to deny, or to collapse under the gravity of what he had done. Amina knelt beside him, her hand gripping his arm, firmly steadying him. "Kwame," she said softly, her voice firm yet filled with compassion. "This is the moment. You must face the consequences of your choices. You are not alone. Listen to her, trust her as you trust me." The old woman took a slow step forward, her gaze never leaving Kwame. "Kwame," she said, her voice soft but carrying an authority that demanded attention. "I have watched you. I have seen what you did." Her words were not accusatory, yet they weighed heavier than any reprimand. You were given a gift meant to test your heart. You chose to take more than you were given. "Tell me, what do you feel now?" Kwame's lips trembled. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His mind a whirlwind of panic and fear. He wanted to justify himself, to explain, to plead, but no words came. His hands twitched as though the gold itself had taken control of his body, his eyes darting to Amina, searching for an ally. A reprieve, some escape from the consequences now pressing upon him. He stammered, voice breaking, I thought it was right. I needed." His sentences trailed off, incoherent, a jumble of fractured reasoning. The old woman's eyes softened slightly, but the edge of judgment remained. "You needed nothing, Kwame. The gold is not what you seek. It is a mirror of your heart. When you took more than you were given, it revealed the greed within you. And now, you are lost." Kwame's body shuddered as if struck. He muttered, I can't. It spoke. It told me. I needed it all." Amina's hand rested firmly on his shoulder. "Kwame, listen to me. The gold is not speaking. It is a reflection of what you chose. You can still return. You can still make amends. But you must let go of the obsession, or it will consume you completely." The old woman raised her staff slightly, a gesture that commanded silence and attention. "Kwame, your actions have consequences, as all choices do. The gold cannot be possessed through deceit. You were given a chance, a test of your heart, and you failed. Yet because of her," she nodded toward Amina, "you may still be saved. But you must surrender the greed that binds you." Kwame's eyes flickered between them, confusion and fear battling against desire. I don't understand. I can't." He sank to his knees, trembling, muttering to himself, repeating fragments of Amina's warnings and the whispers of the gold, as if trying to reconcile the chaos within his mind. Amina knelt beside him, her hand gently pressing against his arm. "Look at me, Kwame. You are not your greed. You are not your mistakes, but you must choose now. Do you want to be consumed or do you want to be saved? Kwame's chest heaved, his eyes wide, and for a fleeting moment the mania in his gaze wavered. He seemed to recognize the weight of his actions, the reality of the choice before him. The gold hidden beneath his shirt felt like both a burden and a lure, but he could sense the possibility of release, of redemption, if only he surrendered it to the hands of the one who had observed everything with clarity and patience. The old woman stepped closer, her voice soft, yet firm. Kwame, the path to freedom begins with honesty. Place the gold where it belongs. Admit what you have done. Only then can your heart find peace. Kwame's hands shook violently as he reached beneath his shirt. The cold metal of the gold bars pressed into his palms, a tangible reminder of his actions. His voice was a whisper, trembling and fragmented. I took it. More than I was given. Amina's eyes met his, filled with unwavering support. It's okay, she said softly. You are acknowledging it. That is the first step. Trust her, Kwame. You can be forgiven. The old woman guided his trembling hands toward the small pot under the mango tree. Kwame placed the gold back carefully, each bar sliding with a soft metallic sound. The tension in his body slowly eased, though his shoulders shook with relief and exhaustion. You have done what must be done, the old woman said, her voice calm, yet carrying the weight of wisdom and authority. Remember this, Kwame, greed may tempt, but only integrity can sustain. Let this lesson guide you, and you may yet find peace. Kwame sank fully to his knees, his body trembling but his mind beginning to clear. He looked at Amina, her hands still steady on his arms, her gaze unwavering. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice broken. I don't know why Amina smiled gently, tears welling in her eyes. You don't need to understand everything right now. What matters is that you are here and you are choosing to return. That is what counts. The old woman nodded approvingly. Let this night be a turning point. The gold is no longer a curse, it is a teacher. You may walk away, both of you, knowing that choices define us more than treasures ever could. Kwame exhaled deeply, the first real breath of relief in hours, as though a weight beyond the gold itself had been lifted from his chest. Amina helped him to his feet, steadying him as they both stood together in the quiet courtyard. The city, now bathed in the soft glow of early evening, seemed to exhale along with them, the chaos of the streets fading into distant background noise. In that moment, a fragile peace settled over them. Kwame, humbled and exhausted, had faced the full consequences of his actions. Amina, steadfast and compassionate, had guided him through the storm. And the old woman, wise and patient, had ensured that justice, balance, and mercy coexisted in the quiet power of the night. Night had fully settled over Lagos, blanketing the city in a quiet darkness that contrasted sharply with the chaos of earlier. The once noisy streets had grown still, save for the distant honks of late-night vehicles and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. In the small courtyard of the old woman's house, a fragile calm had finally descended. Kwame remained on his knees, the weight of his actions pressing down on him more heavily than any gold ever could. Each breath he drew felt like a small victory over the madness that had consumed him. Amina sat beside him, her hands still gently gripping his trembling arms. She did not speak much, allowing the silence to work its subtle magic. The old woman stood a few steps away, her staff lightly touching the ground, eyes calm but piercing, observing every twitch of muscle, every flicker of expression. She had given him the space to confront his own conscience, to experience the full weight of his greed and the chaos it had caused. For the first time in hours, Kwame's mind seemed to clear just enough to comprehend the reality around him. He looked at the small pot beneath the mango tree, now empty of the bars he had greedily hidden moments before. He realized with a jolt how close he had come to losing not just his sanity but himself entirely. The gold, the temptation, had revealed the truth of his heart, something he had been unwilling to face until now. I don't understand, Kwame whispered, his voice hoarse-breaking as the enormity of the night weighed down on him. I thought I could control it. I thought I deserved it, but... He trailed off, staring at the ground, shame coloring every word. Amina placed her hand on his shoulder, her gaze unwavering. Kwame, you were consumed by desire, yes. You let greed take over your mind. But you are still here. You are alive, and you can still make things right. That is what matters. The old woman's voice, calm yet firm, cut through the silence. Kwame, listen carefully. Every choice has consequences. The gold you sought was never meant to destroy you, only to reveal the nature of your heart. You allowed obsession to blind you. And now you see the result. Let this lesson remain with you. Kwame's hands trembled as he bowed his head. I see it now. I see everything. I let my desire blind me to what is real, to what is right. Amina, He paused, tears glistening in his eyes. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Amina's eyes softened. It's not too late, Kwame. You are facing the truth. You are taking responsibility. That is what counts. You cannot change the past, but you can shape your future. She helped him to stand, supporting him carefully as he wobbled slightly. The old woman approached slowly, her gaze gentle now, but still imbued with authority. She placed a hand lightly on Kwame's chest. Feel the weight of your choices, Kwame. Let it teach you humility, patience, and respect for what is given to you. The gold is not evil. Your actions nearly made it so. Now you must learn the power of restraint, honesty, and gratitude. Kwame inhaled deeply, the first real breath he had taken in hours that was free of panic and obsession. I understand, he whispered, voice trembling but sincere. I see now that my greed almost destroyed me, almost ruined everything. Amina, thank you for not giving up on me. Mama, thank you for saving me from myself. The old woman's eyes glimmered with approval. Kindness and guidance can save even the most lost if the heart is willing to accept the lesson. Remember this night, Kwame. Let it guide your steps, not just tonight, but for the rest of your life. The city outside seemed to hold its breath as Kwame took in her words, their weight settling into his bones. He looked at Amina, then at the empty pot, and finally at the gold bars safely returned to the old woman's care. The contrast between the treasure and his near destruction was stark, and he felt an overwhelming wave of humility and gratitude. Amina guided him to sit down on a low stone near the courtyard. Take your time, she said gently. You've been through a lot tonight. The gold was a test, yes, but the real lesson was about your heart, Kwame. Do you understand that now? Kwame nodded slowly, tears streaming freely down his face. Yes, I see it clearly. I see how foolish I was, how blind. I was thinking only of myself, my desires. I forgot what truly matters. The old woman's staff lightly tapped the ground again, marking the gravity of the moment. Kwame, remember this: the world is full of opportunities, but not all of them are earned through greed. True fortune comes from kindness, from honesty, from helping others without expectation. These are the riches that endure. Gold alone cannot give you peace. Kwame's eyes were wide, absorbing every word. He looked at Amina, his voice trembling with sincerity. I will never forget this. I understand now. I will never let greed control me again. I want to be better. I want to be worthy of trust and kindness like Amina. Amina smiled faintly, tears in her eyes. You already have it in you, Kwame. You just had to face the darkness to see the light. She reached out, taking his hand gently, a silent anchor to remind him that he was not alone in the process of redemption. The old woman stepped back, her eyes scanning the courtyard, then finally resting on them both. This night has been a lesson in balance, responsibility, and compassion. You have been tested, Kwame, and you have learned. Do not forget this lesson, for it is more valuable than any treasure the world can offer. Kwame exhaled deeply, the tension and madness of the past hours gradually ebbing away. He looked at the city beyond the courtyard, the familiar streets of Lagos bathed in twilight, and felt a strange sense of awe. The chaos, the noise, the life around him, all of it seemed more vivid, more alive, more real. He understood now that wealth could not define him. Only his choices, his heart, and the way he treated others could determine the path ahead. I will not waste this second chance, he whispered, his voice steadying with conviction. I will act with integrity, with honesty, with care. I will remember what I learned tonight. I will not let greed take control again. The old woman's gaze softened further, a small smile forming on her lips. Then you are ready to return to the world, Kwame. Not as a man ruled by desire, but as a man guided by wisdom and compassion. Amina squeezed his hand gently. Come on, she said softly. Let's go home. We have survived tonight, but now the real journey begins, making the right choices every day. Kwame nodded, his body still weak from the ordeal, but his spirit lighter than it had been in months. The gold no longer pressed against him, yet the lesson it carried weighed heavily in the best possible way, a lesson he would carry forever. As they walked slowly back through the quiet streets of Lagos, Kwame felt the stirrings of hope, gratitude, and purpose rising within him. He had faced the consequences of his choices, felt the torment of obsession, and now, through guidance and compassion, had found the clarity to start anew. The city around them buzzed with life, indifferent yet alive, reflecting the rhythm of a world where choices, good or bad, shape the destiny of every heart that dares to act. The first light of dawn crept over Lagos, painting the city in gentle shades of pink and gold. The once bustling streets were quieter now, the chaos of the previous evening replaced by a calm anticipation of a new day. In the small courtyard of the old woman's house, a stillness lingered, as if the world itself were pausing to acknowledge the lessons learned in the shadows of night. Kwame sat on a low stone, the memory of his actions still vivid, the guilt tempered by a dawning understanding of responsibility. Beside him, Amina rested, a hand on his shoulder, her presence a silent anchor. The gold, now securely back in the small earthenware pot beneath the mango tree, was no longer a temptation but a symbol of a lesson fully learned, that the heart's choices outweigh the allure of wealth. The old woman stepped forward, her staff lightly tapping the earth. Her eyes, bright and perceptive, regarded them both with a mixture of sternness and kindness. Kwame, she began, her voice carrying authority tempered by empathy, you have faced the shadow within your heart. You have seen the consequences of your choices, and you have endured the turmoil of your own greed. Now you stand at the threshold of something far more valuable than any treasure the world can offer: wisdom, humility, and the ability to act rightly. Kwame's shoulders trembled as he absorbed her words. He bowed his head, voice barely above a whisper. I understand now. I see how blind I was, how foolish, and how close I came to losing myself entirely. The old woman nodded slowly. Amina's heart is steadfast, and it guided you back from the edge. Your recognition of your errors is the first step toward true growth. But know this, the world will continue to test you. Opportunities will arise and temptations will appear. Your strength will be measured not by what you possess, but by how you choose to act when nothing is watching. Amina smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with emotion. Kwame, she said softly, you've seen what greed can do. Now you have a choice to let this lesson guide your steps, to embrace honesty, kindness, and integrity in everything you do. You are not defined by the mistakes you made, but by the way you rise after them. Kwame's hands trembled, but he held his chin high, nodding slowly. I want to rise. I want to make things right, to be someone who acts with care and not just for myself. I don't want to let greed control me again. The old woman stepped closer, placing a gentle but firm hand on his shoulder. The gold was never yours to take. It is a tool, a teacher, a test of character. You have learned the lesson, Kwame. From this moment on, you may walk freely, but always remember kindness and integrity are the true treasures more enduring than any wealth. Kwame swallowed his throat tight with emotion. He glanced at Amina, who nodded reassuringly, the warmth in her eyes a balm to the lingering fear and guilt within him. "Thank you," he whispered, voice cracking. I don't know how to repay either of you, but I will honor this lesson for the rest of my life." The old woman's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. "There is no repayment needed, only the commitment to act rightly. Let this experience guide you in every decision you make. Trust in the strength of a good heart, it will never fail you." Kwame exhaled deeply, a shiver running through his body as if the weight of the previous night's chaos had finally lifted. The city outside seemed to breathe with him, the streets glowing softly in the early morning light. He felt the first true sense of peace he had experienced in weeks, perhaps months. Amina stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his back. "The gold is safe, Kwame," she said, her voice steady and gentle. It was never about the bars themselves, it was about what they revealed. Now you have the chance to start fresh, to build a life guided by honesty and compassion. He nodded, the words sinking deep. "I understand now. I will not squander this chance. I will live differently. Better." The old woman gestured toward the small courtyard and the path leading back to the city streets. "Walk forward, Kwame, with the knowledge that you have been tested and have learned. Let your actions from now on reflect the lessons of this night. You are free, but never forget the weight of a heart guided by conscience." As Kwame rose to his feet, steadying himself with Amina's support, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had been saved from the edge not just by the wisdom of the old woman, but by the unwavering kindness and patience of Amina. For the first time, he truly understood the value of integrity and the consequences of allowing greed to govern his actions. He glanced back at the small pot under the mango tree, now empty of the gold bars he had once coveted. In that moment, the treasure had transformed in his eyes, no longer a symbol of wealth, but of wisdom, restraint, and the power of choices made with a pure heart. "Thank you," Kwame said softly, again bowing his head to the old woman. "For everything. For the lesson, for saving me, and for showing me the path I must follow." The old woman nodded, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Walk wisely, young man. Let the world test you, but never forget what you have learned tonight. The greatest treasures are not in gold or silver, but in hearts that act with courage, integrity, and compassion." Amina took his arm, helping him navigate the small courtyard as they prepared to leave. "Let's go," she said gently. "A new day awaits, and with it a new chance to live rightly." As they stepped onto the quiet streets of Lagos, Kwame felt a strange lightness, a freedom he had not known before. The city stretched out before them, full of opportunity and challenges alike. But this time he felt prepared to face it, not with greed, not with fear, but with wisdom, humility, and the understanding that his actions would define the man he was to become. The sun rose higher, spilling golden light across the buildings, the trees, and the dusty streets. It illuminated the faces of two young friends who had endured a night of chaos, temptation, and revelation. Amina walked beside Kwame, her presence a beacon of calm and compassion. Kwame, steady now, carried not gold in his hands, but the weight of newfound understanding and the promise of a better life. The old woman's voice followed them softly, almost like the wind brushing through the leaves. "Remember this, both of you. The world watches, but the heart knows. Let kindness guide your steps, and you will never walk alone." As they moved through the streets of Lagos, the city awake and alive once more, Kwame felt the first true sense of hope in his life. The ordeal of greed, madness, and redemption had passed, leaving in its wake a deeper understanding, a sense of purpose, and the realization that the richest hearts are those that act with integrity, even when no one is watching. The first light of dawn spilled gently over Lagos, painting the city in warm shades of orange and gold. The streets were slowly awakening, the vendors setting up their carts, children stretching and running through the alleys, and the distant hum of cars beginning their daily journey. In the quiet courtyard of the old woman's house, Amina felt a strange calm settle over her, a stark contrast to the chaos of the nights before. The air was fresh, tinged with the subtle scent of blooming flowers and the earthy aroma of sun-warmed dust. Amina adjusted the strap of her small bag and turned toward the old woman. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation and a delicate thread of excitement. She had helped the woman without expectation, guided Kwame through his darkness, and faced the trials of greed and madness. Now at long last, the moment of recognition had arrived. The old woman stepped closer, her staff lightly tapping the ground, each movement deliberate, commanding, and graceful. Her eyes, sharp yet kind, settled on Amina. "My child," she began, her voice calm yet resonant, "you have acted with a heart that knows no selfishness. You helped without question, without expectation, and you guided one who had lost his way. Your actions have shown strength, compassion, and wisdom beyond your years." Amina's chest swelled with a mixture of humility and anticipation. She swallowed, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered softly. I only did what felt right. I didn't expect anything." The old woman smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering. "That is why your reward is true. It is not given to those who seek it, but to those who deserve it. You will find in this gift the means to create a better life, not for selfish gain, but for growth, for hope, and for the power to act with kindness and integrity." She extended her hands, slowly revealing a small, dark, earthenware pot tied with a faded red cloth. Amina approached reverently, her fingers trembling as she lifted the pot. The weight was familiar yet new, as though it carried not just gold, but the sum of all her choices, all her courage, and all the kindness she had offered. With delicate hands, she untied the cloth and opened the pot. Inside lay a single bar of gold, gleaming brilliantly in the early morning light. It was simple, yet it radiated a power far beyond its material value. Amina's eyes widened and a gasp escaped her lips. She had never seen anything so precious up close, and the realization of what it represented, a recognition of her heart. Her integrity, her courage, brought tears to her eyes. This is for me," she asked, her voice barely audible. I don't understand. I didn't ask for it. I only helped." The old woman nodded slowly. "Precisely. That is why it is yours. The reward of a pure heart is never earned through seeking. It is given when the heart is true, when actions are guided by kindness, and when one helps others without expectation. You have shown this, Amina, and now the world acknowledges it through this gift." Amina sank to her knees, holding the gold bar close to her chest. Her heart raced, her mind awash with emotions, gratitude, humility, awe, and a profound sense of responsibility. This was more than wealth. It was a symbol, a testament to the power of selfless action, a tangible reminder that integrity and compassion were recognized in the world. She looked up at the old woman, her voice trembling with sincerity. I don't know how to thank you. This is more than I ever imagined. But I promise, I will use it wisely. I will honor what it represents." The old woman's eyes softened, a faint smile forming on her lips. "You need no promise, child. Your heart has already proven itself. But know this, with this gift comes responsibility. Use it not only for yourself, but to create opportunities to help others and to continue acting with the integrity that brought you here." Amina nodded, the weight of the lesson settling deep in her soul. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of pride and humility. The gold was not a mere possession, it was a message, a reminder that the choices we make with compassion and honesty carry consequences far beyond what we can foresee. Outside the courtyard, the streets of Lagos were coming alive, full of movement and color. Yet in this quiet space, time seemed suspended. The lessons of the past nights, the chaos of Kwame's obsession, and the quiet guidance of the old woman converged into a single profound moment of clarity for Amina. She turned to Kwame, who was standing a few steps away, still absorbing the reality of his redemption. His eyes, once frantic and wild, now held a trace of understanding and humility. Amina offered him a small smile. "It's yours too, Kwame," she said gently. "But only if you carry it with honesty, with care, and with respect for the lesson it teaches." Kwame nodded, his voice soft and uncertain. I understand now. I see how wrong I was, how close I came to losing myself to greed. Thank you for guiding me, for not giving up." Amina felt a sense of unity, a connection not only to Kwame but to the deeper truth the old woman had shared, that the strength of character, the purity of intention, and the willingness to act rightly even when faced with temptation and fear was the true treasure of life. The old woman's gaze swept across them both. "You have learned well," she said. "Now go forward into the world carrying the knowledge that wealth is fleeting, but the value of a kind heart endures forever. Use your gifts wisely. Let them create hope, opportunity, and justice where it is needed." Amina lifted the gold bar, feeling its weight as more than physical. It was a burden and a blessing, a responsibility intertwined with promise. She thought of her life ahead, the choices she would make, and the potential she now had to shape not only her destiny but the lives of those around her. "Thank you, Mama," she said again, bowing slightly. "I will honor this, I promise." The old woman nodded, her expression serene. "Go now, my child. The world awaits and your heart is prepared. Remember, integrity, kindness, and courage will always open doors that no wealth can buy. Carry this lesson with you always." As Amina and Kwame stepped out of the courtyard, the early morning light bathed them in a golden glow, symbolic of the new beginning that awaited. The city, full of life, movement, and opportunity, stretched before them. But for Amina, every street, every face, and every sound now carried a new perspective, a world where goodness was recognized, where courage was rewarded, and where a heart guided by kindness could truly change the course of life. She looked at Kwame and offered him a hopeful smile. "This is a new day," she said softly. "A chance to do things differently, to act rightly, and to help others. Let's make it count." Kwame nodded, his steps steadier now, the shadows of the past night receding. Together they walked through the streets of Lagos, two hearts transformed, carrying the lessons of honesty, courage, and selflessness into a world that would test them but also reward the purity of their actions. The morning sun filtered softly through the narrow alleys of Lagos, casting a warm glow over the city that had been alive with life long before dawn. The streets buzzed with the chatter of vendors, the rhythmic cries of children playing, and the distant hum of traffic. But for Amina and Kwame, the city now felt different. It was no longer a place of struggle, temptation, or distraction. It was a canvas full of possibilities where choices mattered and integrity guided their steps. Amina walked with Kwame through the bustling streets, the small gold bar she had received nestled safely in her bag. It felt lighter now, not in weight, but in symbolism. She no longer saw it merely as wealth, but as a reminder that her choices guided by kindness. Courage and selflessness had brought her to this moment. Every step she took was grounded in awareness of the responsibility she now carried, not to the gold itself, but to the life she could build with the lessons it represented. Kwame's pace matched hers, though his steps were heavier, weighed down by the recent nights of madness and redemption. His mind replayed the events over and over, the gold, his obsession, his near collapse into irrationality and the unwavering patience of both Amina and the old woman. Each memory burned with clarity, forcing him to confront the truth of his actions. He had been reckless, blinded by desire, yet he had survived, guided back by compassion and wisdom. And now he was determined not to squander this second chance. I don't know how to begin, Kwame murmured, his voice low but steady as they paused for a moment in the shade of a mango tree along the road. His eyes were thoughtful, lingering on the horizon where the city stretched endlessly. The way I acted. The greed. I can still feel it lingering in me. Amina placed a hand on his shoulder, her gaze calm and reassuring. Kwame, you have faced it. You've seen the consequences and you've returned from it. That is the beginning, not the end. The rest is about living differently every day and every choice you make. He nodded slowly, letting her words settle. I understand now. I see that wealth is fleeting. It can tempt, it can mislead, but it is not the measure of a person. Integrity, kindness, the courage to do what is right. That is what matters. That is real wealth. Amina smiled, the early sunlight catching in her eyes. Exactly. And now we have the chance to start fresh, to build lives that reflect those lessons. We've been given a rare opportunity not just to survive, but to thrive with purpose, guided by heart. Their path led them back toward the heart of the city, through streets lined with small markets and simple homes. Vendors greeted them with familiar shouts, and the children ran past, playing and laughing. The world seemed alive with energy, yet each moment felt weighted with meaning, each choice carrying the potential to reflect their newfound understanding. As they walked, Amina thought about the possibilities. The gold she carried was more than a reward, it was a tool. It could allow her to help others, to support those in need, and to create opportunities where there had been none. She thought of the vendors struggling to make ends meet, the children who ran barefoot through the streets, and the elderly who labored under the hot sun. This was her chance to make a tangible difference, to turn the lesson into action. Kwame walked beside her, silent for a moment, lost in thought. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. I want to use this second chance to be better. I want to be someone who acts with honor, who thinks beyond myself. I want to help others like you helped me. I want to earn the trust I lost. Amina glanced at him, her eyes softening. You can. It won't be instant, and it won't always be easy. But every small choice, every act of honesty will rebuild what was damaged. The past is gone, but the future is yours to shape. They continued their journey through the waking city, observing people hurrying to their work, students making their way to schools, and neighbors exchanging greetings. Each face, each interaction became a reminder of the ripple effect their choices could have. They were no longer just survivors of circumstance. They were bearers of lessons that could influence others if only they acted consciously. As they passed a small marketplace, Amina paused. She purchased food from a vendor with a generous smile, sharing a portion with a young boy who had been watching them with curiosity. The act was small, almost unnoticed, but it reinforced the lesson she had learned: kindness, freely given, always carries power. Kwame observed quietly, a soft smile tugging at his lips. I think I understand now, he said, watching the boy accept the food with shy gratitude. It's not the gold itself that matters. It's the way we use what we have to lift others. That is the measure of worth. Amina nodded. Yes. And it's not just about lifting others, it's about being the kind of person the world can rely on. The world watches, Kwame, even if it seems indifferent. Our actions echo beyond what we can see. The old woman's words from the courtyard the night before lingered in their minds. The greatest treasures are not in gold or silver, but in hearts that act with courage, integrity, and compassion. Kwame and Amina had both experienced the truth of those words, and now, walking through the city, they understood that the lesson was only beginning. By the time they reached the center of Lagos, the sun had risen fully, casting bright light over the streets and illuminating their path forward. The city, alive with movement, became a symbol of the opportunity that awaited them, a life not defined by greed, not enslaved by desire, but guided by intention and the enduring power of good deeds. Amina looked at Kwame, seeing the weight lifted from his shoulders, the clarity in his eyes. "This is our chance," she said softly, "to act rightly, to help others, to build a life we can be proud of, and to honor the lessons we've learned." Kwame nodded, determination firm in his expression. "Yes, a new beginning. Not because of gold, not because of luck, but because we choose to live with honesty, courage, and kindness. That is the real wealth, the true reward." Together they stepped forward into the bustling streets, their hearts lighter, their minds clear, and their spirits aligned with the wisdom they had earned. The city of Lagos stretched before them, full of challenges, opportunities, and stories yet to unfold. But now, armed with understanding, resilience, and a commitment to integrity, they were ready to face whatever came next. Every step carried the echo of lessons learned, every breath was a reminder of the value of selflessness, and every glance toward the city's horizon symbolized the beginning of a life transformed by courage, kindness, and the enduring power of a good heart. The late afternoon sun bathed Lagos in warm, golden light, stretching long shadows across the bustling streets. The city, alive with its endless rhythm of vendors, children, and commuters, seemed unchanged to those unaware of the quiet, transformative events that had occurred in the small courtyard of the old woman's home. Yet for Amina and Kwame, every brick, every tree, and every face carried a new meaning. They walked side by side, not as two individuals struggling against circumstance, but as companions bonded by trials, lessons, and a shared understanding of the value of integrity. Amina held her bag close, the gold bar still inside, now less a temptation and more a symbol of responsibility. Every step she took reminded her of the choice she had made to help the old woman, to guide Kwame, and to act with a heart untainted by greed. That choice, simple yet profound, had brought clarity, reward, and a renewed sense of purpose into her life. Kwame, walking beside her, was quieter now. His eyes, once wide with obsession and frenzy, now held a steady resolve. He glanced at Amina, a mixture of gratitude and awe in his expression. "I still can't believe how close I came to losing myself," he admitted, his voice soft, reflective. "All for a few bars of gold. I let my heart be blinded by desire." Amina smiled gently. "It's not just about the gold, Kwame. It's about what it revealed, the parts of ourselves we ignore or deny. We were tested and we've learned. That's more valuable than any treasure." As they approached the main street, the old woman's words echoed in their minds. "The greatest treasures are not in gold or silver, but in hearts that act with courage, integrity, and compassion." Kwame looked at the small pot beneath the mango tree, now safely returned, and nodded slowly. He finally understood what Amina had grasped from the start: the gold was never the point. It was the choices it inspired, the strength it tested, and the lessons it imparted that truly mattered. The duo made their way through the crowded streets, observing the people who went about their daily lives, vendors arranging their goods, children chasing each other in laughter, neighbors greeting one another. Each person was living a story, navigating challenges and opportunities just like they had. The difference was that now Amina and Kwame carried within them a consciousness shaped by experience, the knowledge that kindness and honesty are not abstract ideals, but active principles that guide every choice and action. "And I want to do more," Kwame said quietly as they paused near a small fruit stall. He handed a few coins to a young boy who had been quietly watching, the boy's eyes lighting up with gratitude. "I want to help others, to be part of something bigger, not just thinking about myself all the time." Amina watched him, pride welling in her chest. "You can, Kwame. Start small but be consistent. Every act of honesty and generosity creates ripples. You don't need to wait for rewards to know you're doing the right thing." The streets of Lagos continued their vibrant rhythm around them, but within their hearts, a profound stillness settled. The lessons of the past nights, the temptation, the frenzy, the madness, and the guidance had left an indelible mark. They were no longer merely reacting to the city, they were engaging with it intentionally, guided by conscience, morality, and a newfound awareness of their impact on others. Amina glanced down at the gold bar in her bag. Its shine no longer sparked desire or greed, but reverence and purpose. "It's strange," she murmured, "how something so small can hold such weight, not in gold, but in meaning. It's not what it is, but what it represents." Kwame nodded in agreement. "I've learned that now. It's not about what we take, but about how we act and what we give back. That's the true treasure." They walked a little further, reaching a quiet corner where children played with a makeshift ball, their laughter pure and unburdened. Amina crouched down, giving one child a piece of fruit from her bag. The joy in his eyes reflected back a mirror to the satisfaction that comes from selfless acts. Kwame observed a small smile breaking across his face. "I think I finally understand," he whispered. "It's not just the act itself. It's the connection, the impact we have on others. That's what makes life meaningful." Amina nodded. "Yes, Kwame. The gold, the rewards, the recognition, they are secondary. What matters is that we act rightly with integrity and compassion even when no one is watching. That's what shapes who we are and what the world remembers about us." As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm orange glow over the rooftops and streets of Lagos, they continued walking, their steps lighter, their hearts steadier. The city, ever vibrant, reflected the endless opportunities that lay before them, full of people who could be influenced positively, lives that could be changed by small acts of kindness, and choices that could echo far beyond immediate perception. Kwame finally spoke again, his voice strong yet thoughtful. "I won't forget this. I won't let greed blind me again. I'll carry this lesson with me in every decision, in every action. And I'll try to guide others just as Amina guided me." Amina reached out, touching his arm lightly. "We both have a responsibility now, to ourselves, to each other, and to everyone whose lives we touch. That's what makes the journey meaningful." The city's hum grew louder as night began to approach, but within the hearts of Amina and Kwame there was a stillness born of clarity. They had survived temptation, madness, and chaos, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected to the moral compass that would guide their futures. Every step through Lagos reminded them of the fragile balance between desire and integrity, greed and kindness, action and consequence. They had been tested, they had stumbled, but they had also been redeemed, guided by the unwavering power of a kind heart. And now, walking into the vibrant streets under the setting sun, they knew that their actions, driven by conscience and compassion, would continue to shape not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them. In that moment, they understood the ultimate truth. Wealth, power, and temptation are fleeting. Kindness, integrity, and courage endure. And with that understanding, Amina and Kwame stepped forward, ready to embrace a life defined not by what they possessed, but by the goodness they carried in their hearts. Life often tests us in unexpected ways, and it is in those moments that the true measure of a person is revealed. Amina and Kwame's story reminds us that wealth and material rewards are fleeting, but the choices we make with honesty, kindness, and courage leave a lasting impact. Greed and temptation may appear tempting, promising quick success or comfort, yet they can cloud judgment, lead to pain, and even destroy the heart. It is the courage to act rightly even when no one is watching, and the willingness to help others without expectation that shapes our character and paves the way for genuine fulfillment. Amina's unwavering kindness and Kwame's journey from obsession to realization teach us that redemption is always possible. When we face our mistakes, accept responsibility, and allow compassion to guide our actions. True rewards come not from gold or power, but from integrity, empathy, and the ripple effect of selfless deeds. Each act of goodness, no matter how small, has the power to change lives and inspire those around us. As you reflect on this story, think about the choices in your own life. Who have you helped without expecting anything in return? How can you act with more honesty, courage, and compassion in your daily life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might inspire someone else to make the right choice today. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel to follow more tales of hope, kindness, and the transformative power of the human heart. Together we can learn, grow, and create a world where goodness is always recognized and rewarded.